What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is three-time Olympic medalist Elana Meyers Taylor. As she prepares to bobsled in the 2022 Winter Games, Elana is teaching leaders how to cultivate a mindset of continuous learning, which is the root of her trailblazing career. Elana was the first woman to earn a spot on the U.S. national team competing alongside men as a four-man bobsled pilot. And in this conversation, she opens up about exploring her new journey, motherhood, and shares how to turn your obligations into opportunities.
There's no such thing as bad days. There's an opportunity in every day. My husband tells me that all the time, the 100 bad days mean 100 good stories. And that's how he lives his life, regardless of how the day turns out. If he could turn it into a good story, then he's happy. Some of the craziest things I've ever heard of have happened to him. But at the end of the day, he goes to bed every night and is a happy person because things good, bad, and different have happened. But at the end of the day, he has a good story to tell out of it.
Elana, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is great. And I know that as a podcast listener, folks can't see that you have a massive teddy bear hanging out on your back. I love it. When we started our call, Elana had her son there in her arms, and it was great. It was really neat. And I love the family aspect of getting to do these when people are at home. So cool.
Yeah, and I started in my office, and somehow he's still in the living room in my office and everything, and I am relegated to his room, which explains the teddy bear.
That's so perfect. So I loved kind of reading some about you. And I saw your dad was a professional football player.
Yeah,
Clearly, athletics, important element of your family life. What were you able to learn through being the daughter of someone who had lived out a professional athlete's life? What were some of the things you learned about the advantages that sports teaches that you were able to learn even as a child?
it was always important for us to be active. It wasn't necessarily with the intent of us going to be an Olympian or going to be a professional athlete. Like, because my dad had been around professional sport, he understood the rigors of it and really wanted to make sure it was our choice. So it was always important to be active from a health standpoint. But as far as being professional, it was never anything that was pushed on us. And it was always something that was my choice. However, once I decided to make the choice that I wanted to go after this Olympic dream, he was like, okay, here's what you need to do to get there. And if you really want to make this happen, it's going to take a lot of hard work and dedication. And I'll help you get there. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to do the hard work.
Such a great lesson for all of us that it's wonderful to set a goal out there, whatever it is, but there's no easy path to any great goal, right?
No, I think athletics is where we see that the most prevalent. Like you can see people going, well, obviously you're not out there every day with me on the track training for bobsled or anything, but in a sense, you have an idea that athletes are training hard and things like that. It's in other fields, like let's say I was studying to be a chemist or something, you don't really see that. You don't really know what goes into being a world class chemist and those kind of things. Athletics makes it out there center, and we kind of can relate to what those athletes are going through.
As I read your history and studied up on you, I saw in your high school yearbook, it seems like you gave just about every sport known to man a try at some stage, right? Like
Yeah.
you played softball, basketball, soccer, and you ran track. You did all that and still managed to go to a class or two.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. But by 9 years old, you had decided that softball was the sport you were going to chase. Why?
There's just something about softball, like, it's even hard to put into those words to this day. I think one thing is I'm a people person. I love being around other people. I love hearing other people's story. That's why I'm so grateful to be on this podcast and be able to listen as well to other guests because I just love people. So the team aspect of it was one thing.
Mhm.
The other aspects was in softball, you have a high failure rate in softball. If you get a hit 4 times out of 10, you're a good hitter. And that challenge of trying to figure out, trying to overcome this failure, trying to overcome something that people say should not happen was kind of appealing to me. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle piece of how to make this all work.
I love it. But even as a young woman, you actually decided, you declared, I heard, you were going to be an Olympian. I know you're from Atlanta in
Mhm.
'96, the Olympics were there. And that happened also to be the first year that women's softball was an Olympic sport. Really cool.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. I realized, oh, this is something that's attainable. I feel that sports and that goals in general are made that much more real if you can see it. If you can see it, you can believe it, you can become it. Having that front and center, being able to see those athletes right there in the Atlanta Games and win a gold medal is like, okay, this is a real thing. This is not just something far off away that you see every once in a while, every 4 years. This is something that's actually right here. So that was very instrumental in allowing me to believe that I could accomplish it. And also, my parents have always encouraged me to go after my goals with all my heart and all my soul. And being an Olympian meant so much to me. Coming from a military family, that pride to represent your country meant so much that I was going to do anything I could to be able to represent my country on the world's biggest stage.
'96 Olympic team, special group. Who was your favorite player?
Dot Richardson, by far. She was a shortstop. She went to medical school and was actually an orthopedic physician, and she had done it. And because I saw her success, I was like, yeah, I could do that too.
Okay, so I'm going to share. I wrote Dot Richardson's book. This is post '96 Olympics. We're working on the book together, and I'm at her place in Los Angeles. And as you might remember, she hit the home run to win the gold medal for the United States.
Oh, yes.
I talked to her about how cool that must have been to have hit that ball out of the park. And she says, yeah, hold on a second. She kind of escapes, and we're talking for a little bit. And she tosses me a softball, and the softball's got the Olympic rings on it. I thought, oh, that's really cool. I said, where did you get this ball from? And she goes, oh, that's the ball that I hit out of the park. Somebody had given it to her. The conversation goes on. We finish the interview. I give her the ball back, and she goes, now keep it. Excuse me? And she goes, yeah, I hope I do something greater in life than that. But I could see how much it meant to you to have it. Just keep it.
That's amazing.
I don't have very many things in my house that are under lock and key, but
Mhm.
Dot Richardson's softball is under lock and key. Like, we'll have to take a picture of it here for the show notes at some stage. But that's what kind of a person Dot Richardson was. What a special human. I love that she was your favorite player.
That is amazing. That's such a cool story. And her as a person, even cooler to show that she would give up something so what we would see as valuable.
Right?
It's funny because I have these conversations with my husband after the Olympics and after winning a medal. One of the things that happen is people ask you to donate things and memorabilia and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh yes, yes, we can donate. We'll do this, we'll do that. And my husband's like, no, you can't get rid of this stuff. I was like, I lived it. I think a lot of people could get joy from it. So yes, we're gonna donate things or whatnot. And it's an ongoing debate of what to share with the world and what to keep. So my son Nico has to remember my accomplishments by.
That's awesome. I love the idea that you lived it. Neat, but it obviously means more in the hands of others. And that's kind of
Mhm.
neat. Now, you obviously got pretty good at softball in high school, eventually earning a chance to play in college. George Washington, GW.
Yep.
What attracted you there?
Oh, the worst reason to go to college for an athlete, the coach. I was sold by the coach. Her name was Leslie King Moore. She's now the coach at the University of Pennsylvania, and she had actually played in New Zealand for their soccer team on the World Cup team and for the New Zealand softball team too. So everything about her, she was just so amazing. I was like, I gotta go play for her.
Did she stay there the entire time?
No, she left after the first year. So that's why
That's what I was
and
wondering.
I ended up having 4 coaches over the 5 years I was there. So That's why I say to everybody who asks, do not choose a college because of a coach. Granted, I had a bit of a rocky softball career there because of the coaching changes and things like that. But I had a great education, really happy with my studies. But at the end of the day, as a 17-year-old in Georgia and wanting to go to the Olympics, academics wasn't why I chose to go to GW anyway. So, but it all worked out at the end.
You mentioned a little bit of a rocky career there, those different coaches. The bottom line was you were pretty good. You were good enough to actually earn an invitation to try out for the US women's softball team.
Mhm.
Big opportunity. I think that's pretty amazing. But I have read you describe what happened at that tryout as the worst tryout in history.
Yes.
You have to tell me what happened.
So it was the trial for the '08 team. Softball was in this position where it more than likely wasn't going to be in the Olympics anymore. So I knew that was going to be the last team in the Olympics up at that time. Now it's back in the 2020/2021 games just for that game. So that was the last team. So needless to say, I put a ton of pressure on myself because I really thought it was my last opportunity to make an Olympic Games. And I got there and I thought I could hang and I thought it'd be all right. But first opportunity in the batter's box, I struck out and then it just continued to go downhill from there. It got to the point where I literally had thrown the ball from shortstop over the backstop trying to throw the ball from home. And we played on these fields where these backstops were huge. So it was a choke on all epic scale. I think I was a little bit in my own head to begin with. Now they would classify as kind of like imposter syndrome. You question of whether or not you even belong there, even though it's this dream that I've had since I could remember. And then coupled with the pressure, and I think that first strikeout set off a catalyst that I just wasn't able to bounce back from and just spiraled down from there. I was pretty devastated after that happened because I knew that was the end of that. Kind of fed into my own questioning of whether or not I should actually be there to begin with.
That's such a powerful lesson. Now you're in an entire transition world where you're talking to companies and about athletics and about athletes and about the value of hiring athletes. But imposter syndrome exists for all of us in the business world every day.
Mhm.
Many of us ask ourselves, are we really worthy? What lesson did you learn in such an important and delicate age, right? I mean, you're just graduating from college that allowed you to get over that and maybe that we might be able to translate.
I don't think it was until I tried out for bobsled that I really started to get over it and really started to process why that happened and what I need to do moving forward. And for me, transitioning to bobsled, it was one of those kind of things where I felt like I had blown my Olympic opportunity and I might as well give everything I got into this other sport because the sport that I was supposed to go to the Olympics in didn't work out. And softball to bobsled's not the most normal transition, but if you think about the context, is that I did have a background of playing basketball, I did have a background of soccer and track and all these other athletic things. Then you could start to see, okay, she was an athlete, and that's what she was able to transfer over into bobsled. And at that point, I just needed to go out there and clear my mind and look at it as a fresh opportunity. That was the strongest thing that clicked for me. It was an opportunity. Whereas I looked at that softball tryout as something I had to do, something that was so much pressure filled. I didn't look at it as like a chance for a new adventure, a chance to try something else. Switching it to an opportunity versus like something that I had to do, an obligation, really made all the difference in the world to me. And I really just went into bobsled, doe eyed and fresh and just eager to learn and eager to try it. And also without the fear that if I wasn't good at it, that would be the end of the world. So I might as well give it a try.
Isn't it amazing how much more free you can do anything if you believe you have nothing to lose, right?
Yes. Yes.
Again, lessons, we're always trying to pull them from these discussions. You switch obligations to opportunities,
Mhm.
and suddenly you came to it with a fresh mindset.
Yep. Made all the difference in the world. And I think I had to have that mindset or else it would have never worked with bobsled. Number 1, because, I've seen Cool Runnings at that point, but I had no concept of bobsled at all. So, in order to be able to put myself in a position where I was willing to learn, I had to look at it as an opportunity. And in order to be successful with bobsled, I need to figure out the entire sport. I had no concept. Cool Runnings is not the most accurate film, although it's a great one. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out.
How could you not root for the Jamaicans?
Exactly, exactly. Well, now they're still a team and they compete against the US. So now you gotta like,
We got to root against them.
yes, there you
There you go.
go.
So, as I recall, your parents actually saw bobsled on TV, and
Mhm.
this is post Olympic tryout. So, you're not in the Olympics for softball. How do you even get to the place where you begin the Google search on tell me about bobsled?
So they had actually seen bobsled in the Olympics in 2002. They saw a young woman, Vanetta Flowers, who was the first African American to win a gold medal at the Winter Olympics. And she actually is from Birmingham, which I'm from right outside Atlanta. It's all down the same stretch of highway, I-20. So seeing her be successful in it, seeing that she was strong and fast, and knowing that those were my strengths in softball, in 2002, they had actually recommend me go out for bobsled. But I was like, why do I need bobsled? I'm going to be a softball Olympian. That's ridiculous. So after I didn't make the Olympic softball team, that's when they reminded me, said, hey, this bobsled thing, remember we saw this. And it's also one of those examples like if you see it, you can believe it and you can become it. And seeing Vanetta Flowers, a young girl who looked like me, who was from my same area, seeing her be successful, they were like, hey, why don't you give this a try? And that's when I literally just sat down and Googled it and ripped off an email to a coach, and they responded, much to my surprise, and invited me up to Lake Placid, New York for a tryout.
When might you have connected with Vanessa Flowers?
Actually didn't end up connecting with Vanessa Flowers until the 2010 games.
No kidding.
Funny enough, she was actually part of a convoy with now President Joe Biden. Back then, he was vice president. He was part of the diplomatic delegation they sent to the games, and I connected with her there as part of his convoy because then we also got to meet Joe Biden, and it was this big event before opening ceremonies. But that was really the first time had ever met her.
Did you tell her that she was an inspiration for you?
Yes, of course. I took every opportunity, and I took the moment to actually sit down and ask her a question. What was it like for you being the first African American in this sport to win a gold medal? Bobsled is not the most culturally diverse sport, even though we talk about the Jamaican team and whatnot, but there's not a lot of diversity in it. Now the field has changed very greatly, but not only that, that was the first time women's bobsled was contested at the Olympics. So for her to be the first and to be a minority at that point, I took the opportunity to ask her, what was it like and what advice she had for me. And I think the biggest thing that she provided for me was confidence. The fact that regardless of whether or not the people on the rest of the team look like you, that you can still do great things. And just to know that there are people who've come before you, have been successful, who do look like you, even if they're not the people in front of you right now.
I love it. There's so many great lessons in this transition experience for you, right? This idea that too many of us have one goal, one measuring stick that's going to say, here's what success looks like. And sometimes in life, that's not what you're ultimately called for. This idea of being open to new goals
Mhm.
for you, game changer.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's something very strong for everybody. You hear these stories, especially within this past year, of people thinking they want to do one thing for their entire lives. And then, the pandemic hits. And then all of a sudden, their jobs are shifted to home or they're laid off. And it really gave a lot of people the opportunity to reassess where they are and to reassess what they really wanted to do and how they define success. So I think a lot of people have managed to come out of this pandemic finding those things that really give them passion, that really light a fire under them.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. Even this podcast for us wasn't
Yeah.
something that I was imagining pre pandemic. So that's good. Now, okay, I'm going to admit, I've seen Cool Runnings, love the movie, seen it more than once. I know nothing else about bobsled. So I read where you started out as a brakeman,
Mhm,
but you switched to the pilot seat.
mhm.
I assume that there's different skill sets required for each position. Can you give me bobsled 101 here?
So in bobsled now, there are three different disciplines. There is the monobob, one pilot in the sled. There's two man, a brakeman in the back, a driver in the front, and then there's four man, the driver in the front, and then three push athletes behind them. At this current moment, women can compete in all three disciplines, but our main Olympic disciplines that are just for the gender of women are monobob and two man. So at the 2010 Olympics, we just had the two man event, and I was in the back of the sled. The person in the back of the sled, basically, you run and push the sled. This is like a 400-pound sled.
Oh my
You
gosh.
push the sled as fast as you can. The driver's also pushing, but they get in before you. You keep pushing a little bit and then you hop in. And then once you hop in, Your head is tucked between your knees. You can't see anything.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
no leaning, no anything like that. You're fully just sitting there trying to remain in an aerodynamic position and trusting that the driver is going to take care of you. Now, the driver in the front of the sled, you're actually driving the sled, and we sit as low as we can. You just see the top of our helmet, and our eyes will poke out of the sled so we can see because we're actually trying to navigate this sled down the hill. It's a little bit of a pulley system. We basically pull left to turn the sled left, pull right to go turn the sled right, and back and forth kind of system. But it's as difficult as opening and closing your hand in split seconds. Like it is crazy fast. We go over 90 miles per hour and all over a mile long track of ice just to get down as fast as we can.
And in that break roll, you are totally in a trusting position.
Yes.
There's nothing else.
Nope.
I read where you described bobsled as being thrown in a trash can down a rocky hill.
Yes, that's a good run too.
That's a good run.
Most people that I know of, I think I've only ever known one or two athletes throughout the world who haven't crashed. So it's a very normal part of our sport. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen.
So you moved from the back to the front.
Mhm.
How did this idea of versatility that we've discussed already several times play into what you've been able to achieve in bobsled?
So it was multifaceted in a sense because one of the things that I really appreciated about the sport is it has a lot of strengths to those who are strong and fast. And that includes if you're a driver and you're strong and fast, you're going to have an advantage because you push as well. So if a driver who's pushing hops in with a brakeman who's also strong and fast, you're going to have a faster start time. But also from my days of softball, I like having a sense of control. I like having the bat in my hand, so to speak. And being in the back and not being able to see, I knew within 2 weeks of starting bobsled that this wasn't going to work for me. Like I needed to be in the front seat and control my own destiny in a sense.
We'll be back after this.
Your business phone service should not be complicated to set up, manage, and use. Nextiva connects your phone system with business apps, AI, and automation on a single platform to run your business. With their easy to use dashboard, you will be able to connect with your team and customers all in one place. Nextiva, powering communication across the Pac 12 and now the Corporate Competitor Podcast.
Welcome back to Corporate Competitor Podcast. Your bobsled career is incredibly decorated. You got a bronze in 2010, silver 2014, silver in 2018, and I understand you're working toward 2022 right now.
Yep, still working every single day. You know, I'm a year now postpartum. So this past couple years with the pandemic and everything like that, it's been one of the more difficult lead ups to the Olympics I've ever had. But I'm confident that it's going to be a rewarding one.
I love it. I want to ask you about a window, though, in which you became the first woman to compete with men as part of a four-person bobsled.
Mhm.
What were the challenges you faced from teammates and fans breaking that barrier?
Oh my gosh. Women hadn't been allowed to do four man since pretty much the beginning of bobsled since 1939 all the way up until 2014. So when we had the opportunity to finally do it after much pleading and trying to get this pushed through, and I personally decided to go after it, but I could not get guys to be able to be on my team. They didn't want to do it. They didn't think I could drive a sled, on and on and on. Fortunately, I had a ringer. My husband is a bobsledder. He had taken some time off just to go coach track and field actually in Arizona, but I called him up and he came up and was willing to push for me, of course. You know, it was either push for me or sleep on the couch. So he came up to push for me. And then because he came up to push for me, two other guys said they would push for me as well. And then we ended up being successful and made the US men's national team. I was the first woman to do so.
That is awesome. And I'm glad he made the choice not to sleep on the couch. That's genius.
Yeah, me too.
And great leverage. Way to use both your speed and your leverage. So, in that first Olympics, you won a bronze. And I love your line. You say the bronze medalists are the happiest folks on the podium, right?
Yes.
For the average non Olympic follower, here we are in an Olympic year, even though it's not Winter Olympics. Explain why the bronze medalists are happiest.
Yes, because the bronze medal position, you are so close. You know, you are so close to not getting a medal at all. I haven't won a gold medal yet, but the difference between gold and silver, silver and bronze, you know, isn't that much. the difference between being not on the podium and on the podium is significant. So bronze medalist, you have the sight and you see that you were so close to not even making the podium at all that you are just completely excited and over the moon that you were even blessed to be up there to begin with. When I won my bronze medal, you couldn't tell me anything. Like I was showing it everywhere. I slept with it on everywhere I went. That came with me because I was just so excited. And also, what came with the bronze medal because I was so excited about it and because we had accomplished this amazing thing that we weren't expected to do, it was part of it that made me question of whether or not I wanted to go on and continue competing in bobsled because you're at the point you're like, okay, well, I have this incredible medal that very few people in the world are able to win at all. And I'm pretty happy about it at this point. I'm pretty happy with my career at this point. Do I really want to continue doing this? And for me, it was always a yes because I love the sport so much. Of course, I've always wanted a gold medal. I still want a gold medal, but it became about more than just winning a medal because I had one at that point. It became about, hey, I really love what I'm doing. Let's see if I can be the best in the world at it.
I love it. One of the things I saw was that you actually even you say you wore it to bed. You actually even took it to Wendy's and got a free Frosty. Is that true?
Yes, yes. We went to Wendy's. We were in Park City. Post Olympics, I'm not so much worried about my nutrition or anything. And I went in a Frosty or whatever, and I asked them, "Do you have a bronze medal discount?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" Pulled out my medal and I said, "Do you have a discount for this?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was so cool. Everybody's taking pictures and all this stuff. And lo and behold, I got a Frosty. So
Well, awesome. And hopefully one day a Wendy's sponsorship. That would be really great. So you shift gears again and you give rugby a shot.
Mhm.
Like rugby?
Rugby had always appealed to me from the sense of my dad being a football player. So I was out in California, the rugby team was out there, and the coach saw me training and he's like, "Hey, why don't you give rugby a shot?" I was like, "Well, I'm kind of busy training for this little thing coming up in February called the Olympics, but I'll let you know afterwards." And after the Sochi games, I was pretty disappointed with my performance, with the outcome. Yes, it was a silver medal, but I was disappointed with the way things had turned out.
As a silver medalist, you weren't the happiest person on the medal stand.
No, because in contrast, you know how close to a gold medal you are.
Right.
For me, it was a tenth of a second. I needed a change of pace, literally and figuratively. So that's when I hit up the rugby coach and said, "Hey, I'm interested. Can I give this a try?" And he's like, "Sure, come on out." I came out and tried out for the team, and lo and behold, I had the opportunity to play 2 tournaments with them, which was a really amazing opportunity.
You made Team USA
Yeah,
as just a weekend opportunity
yeah.
playing rugby. We had a guest on the podcast, the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan,
Mhm,
who played rugby at Brown. And he talked a lot about the idea that a rugby scrum is a great business lesson because you need different people, different sizes, but they all have to be moving in the same direction
mhm.
at the same speed in order to make it happen. Was there something in particular that rugby taught you?
One of the biggest things rugby did for me at that time is because I was so heartbroken over the Olympics and how it turned out is I think it really reignited a passion for sport in me and being on team sports and being around my teammates and those type of things. So I learned a lot about myself. Also, it was one of those opportunities again where I had to really take stock of where I was, go into it with fresh eyes and really learn a lot. I had to analyze there where I was and what I was doing and what I needed to figure out in order to play rugby. But it also made me analyze, hey, I need to really take a look at my bobsled career and where I'm going, what I want to do. And rugby really, believe it or not, gave me a newfound passion for bobsled.
That's interesting. So every once in a while, we kind of need that, right? Even in our business lives, we need to take a little break from what we're doing and try something new that could reinvigorate you.
Mhm. It was different enough. So I literally had to figure out how I was going to learn this new skill of being able to run for 7 minutes straight, and the only way to do it is to get out and do it. So it was a completely different skill set than what I had been training for the past 8 years. To go in this and to realize that I needed a different skill set and to transition, and so to speak, I then carried that into my sliding career and realized that, hey, maybe there's some different skill sets that I need to look at in order to enhance my bobsledding.
I love it. So now you go back to bobsled.
Mhm.
I listened to a TED talk where you shared that enjoying the process and the journey to getting to the medal stand was as important, if not more important, than the moment on the stand.
Yes.
all of us could learn from that about this idea of enjoying the process and the journey. So many of us feel mired, it seems, because we're not yet there. Tell me about enjoying the process.
Well, I think the first thing to realize is that whatever you're going for in life, whatever accomplishment or goal or achievement you're after, whether it's a gold medal, whether it's a particular job title or something like that, that ends up only being a moment, one single moment. And then after that, that moment's gone. If you try to define yourself within that one single moment, you're going to find that after that moment happens, you're going to find yourself lost in a sense. You're not going to understand what happened because it's such a fleeting moment. It doesn't define your life. You can't live in a gold medal moment. That's just not how the world works. Even now, like being a parent and bobsledding, like as soon as I step off the award stand, my kid's crying, I got to deal with it and stuff. And he doesn't care that I just won the medal. I'm sure maybe in the future he'll look back at it and be like, oh, yeah, mom, that was pretty cool. But right now he has needs to take care of and things like that.
He wants to spit up on you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And, it's the same as those gold medal moments. As soon as you live them, life goes on, whether or not you want it to or not. You can't live in those moments. So it's really important to enjoy the journey. If you're not enjoying what you do to get to that point, you're missing an opportunity. You're missing out on living life. I'm one of those type of people who tries to wake up and, yes, it's hard sometimes. You might have slept wrong or whatever, but I try to wake up happy every day. And I feel like one of the ways that you're able to wake up happy every day is to realize that every day you have an opportunity. Every day you have an opportunity to start living the life you want to live and to really enjoy the day. And as long as you're enjoying every day you're out there, then once that moment hits, then you're going to feel fulfilled. You're going to feel successful. You're not just going to feel lost after that moment comes and goes.
What an important shift from I have to I get to.
Hmm.
Just how you rephrase the opportunity in your mind. What I love about it when you say you don't define yourself by one single moment, yet you're referring to gold medal moments, right? But thank God you didn't define yourself by throwing the ball over the backstop. You could have just as easily been defined by that moment as well.
Part of me actually was. For me, what was crucial is I fortunately surround myself by amazing people, whether it's my parents or my friends or whatnot. Like they had never defined me as a softball player. Softball was something I did, it wasn't who I was. Having that support around me helped me understand that even if I did define myself as somebody who choked at a softball tryout, that's not who I was. And I needed to, desperately need to at that time, find what else I had passion under. And they were the people who helped remind me, say, hey, look, you are good at other things. There's other things you can be doing. Softball was always going to end at some point, and that's something they remind me of to this day. Like bobsled will come to an end at some point. You have to know what else you're passionate about and know what else that you can do and be confident that life goes on and there's still plenty of moments to enjoy.
And so that reframing, I know that was a key element of your commencement address at GW in 2018. You talked about a lot of bad days on the way to gold medal moments,
Mhm,
but that ability to reframe that perspective about those days is what allowed you ultimately to have the gold medal moment.
mhm.
Who was most responsible? You mentioned friends, family. Was there someone in particular that shared that most with you?
It's something that's being reinforced throughout my entire life, whether it's my parents or my sisters or things like that. But I think most recently it's my husband. My husband tells me that all the time, there's no such thing as bad days. There's an opportunity in every day. And there's a song, I can't remember who it's by, but it says 100 bad days mean 100 good stories. And that's how he lives his life in order to get good stories. And regardless of how the day turns out, if he could turn it into a good story, then he's happy. I've seen him firsthand by living under that principle. Some of the craziest things I've ever heard of have happened to him. But at the end of the day, he goes to bed every night and is a happy person because things good, bad, and different have happened. But at the end of the day, he has a good story to tell out of it. And if you ever want to hear somebody tell a good story, that's the person you should talk to because he's got a ton of them.
So, Lana, the premise of this podcast is that a disproportionate number of Fortune 500 executives were actively engaged in sports at both the high school and the collegiate levels. Now, we know it's not causation, right? They're not executives because they were athletes. There are a lot of factors, but do you think there's a truism there that your leadership has been enhanced over the years through what you've learned in athletics?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. In athletics, there's already an inherent goal that you're all trying to reach. Whether it's, you start at the little league level, it's just to win your league, or all the way up to win a gold medal. There's already a goal you're trying to reach, so you don't have to define it. Learning how to go hard and work for a goal and to unite people and to lead people and all those kind of attributes we get from sports. That's why, there's a correlation between Fortune 500 CEOs and CFOs and their athletic careers because of those skills that are invaluable. And starting out your leadership position, like for instance, in the little league setting, you already know that your goal is to win that league. Then you just have to work on the planning. So to be able to have that experience from a very young age to work on the fine details of how you get to that goal and to already know that everybody's on that same page, that's a very powerful thing to have such a young level at. And then once you get to later in your career, even in high school, you'll see that things start to diverge. People's goals are not only to win the state championship, but now you have people who want to get a scholarship, or now you have people who just want it to look really good on their college applications, and you have these divergent goals. But because you've had that experience at the lower levels, you know how to get those people together at the higher levels, even though some of the goals start to diverge. So it gives you that really fine look into leadership and gives you a lot of different real life kind of examples of it at a very young age.
As you've matured as an athlete, and I jokingly put as I was sending you the questions, that's code word for heading into the back nine of your career, right? You've begun to work on the transition to life that will involve business, right? A post Olympic life, post athletic life. What's the most important characteristic that all these years of toil has taught you that you're going to be using as you move forward as a leader in the workplace?
For me, I think the biggest thing that I've learned throughout my journey is you have to be a continual student. You have to be willing to learn at every step of the game. That's how I look at it, especially as I transition into the business world. Is I've maintained going to school my entire career. Like I've been in school, whether it's getting my MBA or different degrees throughout the way, and I've had these different opportunities from a formal education standpoint. But even moving forward, like I have to go into whichever line of working I'm going next into and be willing and open to learn. But at the same point, if I decide I want to go into bobsled for another 4 years, I have to be willing and open to learn because those 4 years are going to look completely different than these past 4 years. And if I'm not learning, if I'm not evolving, I'm not going to be successful. That's the biggest thing that I've probably going to take away from my sporting experience is that need to continuously learn. And I feel that way even in personal relationships. People change over time. And if you're not continually learning about the new interests of somebody, or for instance, in my marriage, if I'm not continually learning about my husband's goals and his passions and things like that, then we're not going to be successful as a couple either.
That's great advice. Be a continual learner, but not just about business, but about people and about life skills. And
Mhm.
I love it. You've also made it your mission to work with the Women's Sports Foundation to encourage more young women to remain or to participate in athletics. When speaking to these young women, what's the greatest benefit you're suggesting they'll receive from a dedication to athletics?
When I talk to young girls, my goal isn't to go out there and get every one of them to be an Olympian.
No.
Definitely not. And that's not realistic for anybody. And I never try to set that bar for anybody. That's not the bar I set for my own kids. So why would I go out there and set that bar for the children I'm talking about? I really want them to use sport as a vehicle to reach whatever goal they want to accomplish. I'm sure some of them do want to be an Olympians, and that's great. I think people who want to should strive for that goal. But I would much rather they use whatever they can from the field of play to go out and cure cancer or go out and try to
Amen.
build the next rocket to Mars and all these type of things. So every time I speak with a young person, I tell them the benefits of sports and try to encourage them to continue to participate and to play as many sports as they can, but with the emphasis that it can be a vehicle to whatever career you're going to do next. And there will be a next for all of us.
There is a next for all of us. So there are too many people today. I think one of the great words that's overused is the word teams, right? When people are describing, especially in the corporate world, me and my team. The truth is, they're not a team. They're just a bunch of individual players all seeking their own good. But there's a bridge that you have to cover to actually go from a group of individuals to becoming a team. As someone who's played and been part of real teams, great teams,
Mhm.
what are some of the elements that we should consider as we're building that bridge with our collection of teammates to try to get them to become something special?
One of the things that goes missing a lot of times when people think about teams is the need for respect for all members of the team. I've been on plenty of different teams, and sometimes we think about, oh, teams have to be buddy buddy and everybody has to get along. And there does need to be a certain level of rapport between all team members. But when I think about team chemistry and things like that, everyone should have a mutual respect for everybody else on the team. Part of leaders on that team is to work towards that mutual respect. So you don't have to agree with every decision somebody makes on your team, but you should have the respect for them that they're going to make that decision. You should have the respect that they're really working hard to achieve the goals. And that's what as a leader you should work to foster is the respect that everybody's out there trying to accomplish the greater goal of the team. Of course, as a leader, part of your job is to set that goal.
Establish that.
But once that goal is established, is to make sure all parties are working together to achieve that, but also that they do have that respect for each other and that they can work together well enough to accomplish whatever we're trying to accomplish.
That's a powerful addition. We've asked this question plenty of times. No one's ever had that answer. Thank you. That was really powerful.
No problem.
Alana, I am grateful. It was so much fun when we first started our conversation. You were sitting in your office, you had Team USA and all that good stuff behind you. Now you've got a teddy bear behind you as you're sitting in your son's room. Awesome. What a great day. And thank you so much today for being with us and being a corporate competitor.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having me and sharing your stories as well.
Looking back on my notes, I want to emphasize one thing. Elana did not let failure define her career. Feeling obligation can really stack the cards against you, but seeing life as the unfolding of new opportunities can keep you eager to learn. It all takes the right perspective. To listen to another conversation on keeping the right perspective, check out episode 31 with Kyle Carpenter, the youngest living recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir. How
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.